Good morning. This is Pamela Hitchcock doing the video for my application. And today's date is June 27, 2021. That's just so you know who this is. Now I will begin. Good morning. I'm Miss H, and welcome to my social studies class. I just love social studies. I love everything about it. I love the geography. I love the history. I love the language. I love the culture. And I'm always looking up and reading and researching anything I can get my hands on. And I've done this for many, many years. And one of the things I feel like happens when I'm researching and studying is I feel like I'm in a time machine, and I step in and I push some buttons and I turn some dials, and poof, all of a sudden I'm in a different place, experiencing new people and new cultures and new languages and new lands. And sometimes it's new land for the people I'm witnessing too. And I get to know how they live and how they work and how they survived or not, uh, as they go through life with their challenges and troubles and many situations. And one of the things I'd like to share with you today is one of the times that I stepped back into history, about an incident that happened that I didn't learn about for many, many years. I certainly didn't learn it in school. And it took place during the time of the American Civil War, otherwise known as the War between the States or the War of Northern Aggression. And there's other names, but sometime I'll share with you on that. That's a little tease, and I'll go into that another time. But this happened, the Civil War between 1863 and 1865, and I don't want us to get hung up on dates. Sometimes dates are important, but it's more important to understand the environment, the situations that are occurring, as opposed to exactly when this happened. And a lot of people that don't know a lot about history, and they certainly weren't taught it in school, is about an incident that took place in New York City in 1863. Now, a lot of people, including myself at one time, thought that the North was for freedom of slaves and the South was for keeping slaves. In actuality, uh, that was not the main priority of President Lincoln when they went into war between the Union of the North and the Confederacy of the South. They were really looking to preserve the Union, and the South wanted to preserve states' rights. And again, that's a little tease that I can go into another time, because I want to share another time, another incident that happened during the Civil War. And this was soon after the Battle of Gettysburg that President Lincoln and his cabinet or his advisors felt that they needed to put into effect a draft, which meant that men, women, men or boys, this time it, between the ages of 18 and 36, and it later changed. But this was the first time in history in our nation that a draft was put into effect, requiring men to sign up to go into the military. And not everybody was happy about this. In New York City, there were a lot of immigrants that came over for a better life, from nations all over the world, but particularly from Europe. And they were so afraid that if the slaves were freed, they'd come north and take their jobs that the immigrants worked very hard to get. And they were menial, dirty, very low paying jobs. And, but they struggled to get these and they didn't want to give them up. And also that they might lose their homes to the freed slaves, which were just deplorable, terrible living conditions, cramped in these dirty, rundown tenements or apartments, which again, I have more information on and I can share with you another time. But they put the draft into effect, and they were pulling names out of a basket in a federal building in New York City. And one of the names pulled was a very favorite fire chief. And some demonstrators said, "Oh, no, you're not taking our chief." And it started out as a peaceful demonstration. And it soon progressed into a violent riot. And not only did they destroy that federal building, but then the rioters just created mayhem. And they burned and destroyed federal buildings, Black businesses and homes. Uh, if they thought someone was a sympathizer or an abolitionist, meaning that they were in favor of freeing the slaves, they went after those people. They beat women, children, men in the streets and hanged them, or what later became known as lynching or being lynched, which is another tease because I have more information as to how it became known as being lynched another time. And it just became more and more destructive. And thousands of dollars of property was damaged. But the mob, the rioters, decided to go attack a Black orphanage run by two women in the city of New York. And there were about 230 or so children that lived there that had nowhere else to go. And word did get to the women that the rioters were coming, and they were able to get the children out and into the safety of another building. And the rioters arrived, but they didn't find anybody, and they destroyed and the furniture and the clothing and the books and just everything. And then they set fire to the orphanage, burning it to the ground. And at the time, they thought everybody survived. And then as they were going through the rubble, they discovered that there was a little girl who was so afraid she had hidden under her bed and then succumbed to the fire. And so a life at the orphanage was lost. And it's estimated, there again, depending on where you're doing your research, what you're reading, between 30 and 300 people were killed, and definitely more or hurt and injured. And as I said, thousands of dollars of property damage. And we don't know about these sort of things. And the women tried to rebuild the orphanage not too long afterwards. And the property owners near the orphanage got so upset that they went to the city government and put up such a protest and forced the city government to not allow the orphanage to be rebuilt. And they had to rebuild at another time. This is just one of my adventures into the past that I didn't know about, and many people didn't know about that. They always think that the North was all for freedom of the slaves, and that was on the top priority. And at the time, it really wasn't. It later became that. But there's so much that I want to share with you, and I thank you so much for being such a good class today. And possibly you can do your own research and share with us what you find out. I'd love that. Maybe you can have a question and try to stump the teacher, which I'm sure you could, because it's not like this lady knows everything that there is to know about history. But that's one of the things that I learned when I stepped into my time machine and went into the back of back in time. So thank you so much. I'll see you next time, and have a good rest of your day. Bye now.